Collected Essays of Valerie Lynn Stevens. The Myth of Collectivism. It is often assumed by the more conformant members of any society that the collective as placed before the individual is of a higher moral order. And while traditionalism in itself does perhaps initially seek a higher moral imperative, just as non-traditionalism does, the latter approach is, in the end, more holistic and sound. The issue with blind obeisance and conformity is that it fails to employ, as a kind of psycho-spiritual tool, the necessary resistance to the very system which it supports, a system that is inevitably ill-fated to transmogrify into its moral opposite in the face of human turpitude and lassitude. Swiss philosopher and psychoanalyst Carl Jung once defined individuation as the end result of the strivings of the individual's own need to more authentically actualize itself in the face of oppressive collectivism. It is, in a sense, a psychic collection of scars, skills, and revelations acquired in the struggle for self-mastery and fulfillment. Further, assuming that the individuated and more actuated self should naturally have more to contribute to society as a whole and not less, and in a much healthier and efficacious way, the latter approach of individuation over conformity more comprehensively addresses the moralistic gravitas and ethos of each individual's higher calling and needs, as well as those of the society they dwell in. Furthermore, concerning the current taxonomy of speciation, every human being is, when all is seen, not only as is, but as it is enacted upon by the external world, their own species. Moreover, the same could probably be safely deduced about most forms of life on Earth. But this especially applies to human beings, as we are all each so uniquely calibrated and so complex and ever-evolving, both philosophically speaking and physiologically speaking, especially on a quantum or subatomic level. To be fair, taxonomical systems serve their attendant purposes, most of which are well-intentioned. Nevertheless, this can very quickly devolve into a kind of reductionism and myopia, which in turn can do more harm than good, particularly on a humanistic and moralistic level. Furthermore, let's explore the dark underbelly of the beast known as blind conformity. During many dark periods of human history, many individuals, full of malice and motivated by all sorts of reprobate and evil ideologies, have caused unimaginable suffering to the human race, all rationalized and indeed even championed under the guise of nationalistic, religious, or otherwise general communal solidarity. And as Oscar Wilde once observed, patriotism is a virtue of the vicious. Although I personally think the word nationalism to be more apt. What he was getting at was that the majority rule does not preclude a system of moralistic checks and balances, which needs to be operant in order to ensure less abuses of power. In fact, many would surmise that the more people who seem to be blindly and vigorously jumping on the bandwagon about something, the less likely what they are supporting is both rationally and or morally sound. Thus bringing me to my main point concerning blind conformity as an inadequate and actually sinful substitute for individuation. The main ways that blind conformity contributes to more evil rather than good in society is that it interferes with the mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and vocational health, genuine self-esteem, and wholeness of each person who adheres to it. Societal evils such as physical, sexual, and mental, psychological, and emotional abuse, especially of children, become prevalent. Many do not see the connection between this, but I guarantee you there absolutely is. One's own personal accountability for one's own life trajectory are essential to each our own ability to proceed in a positive and pro-social manner towards psycho-spiritual growth and functionality. Moreover, many character disturbances and disorders are both directly and indirectly the result of neglect of one's own spiritual, moral, and general existential responsibilities to the collective and the individual. Moreover, a daily application and practice of self-reflection and examination are moralistically imperative towards the proper development of our innermost being and character. In essence, we must first know thyself if we are to be able to contribute in any healthy and robust way to those persons and causes whose paths we will cross and whose tasks we shall undergo out in society. After all, the world is so much better off and much more interesting and challenging, with each our own truest selves being deployed in it. And although this journey can be frightening and arduous more often than not, at least we will have paved the way for the next brave soul who follows in our footsteps on their own path to self-actualization. Thus we can see how the striving for self-actualization and individuation enables us to be the best that we can be, both for ourselves and for others. For every person who chooses the long, hard, and often lonesome road of inner truth, that many more choose the wide and smooth road of blind conformity, and the world does suffer for it. Furthermore, applying a taxonomically inductive solipsism, if you will, no matter the similarities which may exist between two human individuals, these similarities are almost so generic and ambiguous as to be rendered superficial and moot. Because ultimately we live in a world which thwarts vigorous individuation and actualization at every impasse. I have often found it amusing how Western culture is referred to as individualistic. In truth, conformity and mediocrity, or the status quo, is encouraged and even coercively enforced and socially engineered. And perhaps the illusory concept of and the almost militant adhesion to the collective is an ersatz manifestation of this. To be sure, on the surface, a ruggedly individualistic Marlboro Man persona is encouraged, especially amongst the male human population, but upon further analysis, this is just that, an illusion and a persona. That is to say that a genuine and robust individualism or individuation, to borrow a Jungian term, whenever people attempt it, is not only met with suspicion, but often outright contempt, hostility, and interference. And this is truly a travesty of epic proportions, because this not only affects the individual in very deleterious and profound ways, but also adversely impacts the larger collective from achieving upward psychospiritual mobility. It hinders collective health and vigor by engaging in oppression dynamics which prevent individual persons from being able to excavate and employ the skills and talents which only they can offer in the precisely calibrated and configured manner which only they can. In finale, all organisms thrive in the right environment, and many who take up the cross of individuating themselves find to their chagrin and abiding existential angst that no room at the inn will probably ever be extended to them on a less than contingent basis. And so they must somehow become almost existential vigilantes in constant pursuit of the plunderers and pillagers of their own rightful dues and lot in life. Yet this soon exacts from them more energial reserves than they have to spend. For they truly need to learn how to not devote such time and energy trying to get others who oppress them to become enlightened in all the ways that they themselves have become awakened. Instead, they hopefully learn how to cull all of their resources, both inward and outward, in order to carve out their own niche, no matter how long it may take.